I laid in bed, restless, my mind racing with the conversation from earlier that evening. Aaron's words echoed in my head. "Your family, Beth. Just let us build on Grandpa's land. We deserve it too." How could he say that? That land was sacred, meant for Grandpa's dream project, a community center where he could share his passion for woodworking with the neighborhood kids. It was his dying wish, and I intended to honor it. Aaron always had a way of making me feel guilty, like I owed him something. But this time it felt different, like he was taking advantage of our familial bond for his own selfish gain. I tossed and turned, replaying the scenario. What? That land was meant for Grandpa's dream project. I had protested, my voice trembling with disbelief. Aaron's words cut deep. "Come on, sis. We're not asking for much, just a small piece of that vast property. You know you can't handle all of it alone." Alone. The word stung. It had been 3 years since my husband passed, leaving me to manage Grandpa's carpentry business single-handedly. But I wasn't helpless, and I certainly didn't need Aaron's pity or his demands. Still, the nagging guilt persisted. Aaron was family, after all, and he had a point. The land was vast, and maintaining it was a constant struggle. Perhaps I could compromise, allocate a small portion for him to build on, while preserving the rest for Grandpa's vision. With a heavy sigh, I made my decision. I would hear Aaron out, but on my terms. Grandpa's dream would not be compromised, no matter what. A few days later, Aaron's wife, Ally, showed up at my doorstep, clutching a thick folder adorned with an architectural firm's logo. She barged in without so much as a greeting, her expression stern and unyielding. "Here are the blueprints," she announced, slamming the folder onto the kitchen table. "As you can see, we have everything planned out in meticulous detail." I opened the folder, my eyes widening at the elaborate designs. An entire mansion? But I thought we agreed on a modest house. Ally scoffed, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arching in disdain. "Don't be ridiculous, Beth. We deserve a home that matches our status and success. This is non-negotiable." My throat tightened as I flipped through the pages, each one more extravagant than the last. Grand foyers, multiple wings, even a private theater. It was excessive, to say the least. "But what about Grandpa's dream project?" I protested weakly. "We can't just pave over the entire property for your palace." Ally's piercing gaze bore into me, her lips curling into a condescending smirk. "Oh, please, that silly little community center? It's time to let go of the past and embrace the future, Beth. Our future." Her words stung like a slap across the face. How dare she dismiss Grandpa's lifelong dream so callously? The very dream that had sustained his spirit through countless hardships. The dream he had entrusted to me on his deathbed. I opened my mouth to argue, but Ally held up a perfectly manicured hand, effectively silencing me. "Save your breath. This is happening, whether you like it or not. We'll be expecting the funds for construction within the month." With that, she turned on her heel and strode out, leaving me to stare helplessly at the blueprints that threatened to consume everything Grandpa had worked so hard for. My hands trembled with a mixture of rage and despair. How could they be so heartless, so utterly devoid of respect for the man who had taken me in and raised me as his own? Didn't our shared history mean anything to them? I slumped into a chair, the weight of their demands crushing me. It seemed that no matter how hard I fought, they would always find a way to strip me of my dignity, to trample over the legacy that meant everything to me. But as the initial shock subsided, a familiar fire began to burn within me, the same fire that had fueled Grandpa's determination in the face of adversity. I would not let them win, not without a fight. It was time to take a stand, to protect the dream that had shaped my very existence. With renewed resolve, I gathered the blueprints and began formulating a plan. If Aaron and Ally wanted a battle, they would get one, and this time I intended to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The next morning I found myself at the hospital, visiting my ailing father John. As I approached his room, I overheard Ally's shrill voice echoing in the hallway. "It's just so awful, isn't it? But until he's gone, we can't get what's truly ours." My heart sank as the meaning of her words registered. She was talking about Dad's inheritance. My inheritance, the one tied to Grandpa's land and his dream project. I peered around the corner, and there she was, phone pressed to her ear, oblivious to my presence. Her face was twisted into an expression of pure disgust, as if the very thought of my father's existence repulsed her. I know, she continued, her voice dripping with impatience. But the sooner he kicks the bucket, the sooner we can finally live the life we deserve. No more scraping by, no more sacrifices. My hands balled into fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms. How could she be so callous, so utterly devoid of human decency? This was her own father-in-law she was talking about, a man who had welcomed her into our family with open arms. Bile rose in my throat as the full weight of her words hit me. She wasn't just after Grandpa's land, she was after everything, every last penny of our inheritance, and she was willing to wish death upon my father to get it. In that moment, something shifted within me. The anger, the resentment, the overwhelming sense of injustice, it all crystallized into a single, unwavering purpose. I would not stand idly by while these vultures picked our family legacy apart, piece by piece. Ally finally noticed me standing there, her eyes widening in surprise. Beth, I didn't see you there. Save it, I spat, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. I heard everything. Her face paled, but she quickly regained her composure, her lips curling into a sickly sweet smile. Oh, you know how it is with family matters. Things get said in the heat of the moment, but we don't really mean them. Don't insult my intelligence, I growled, taking a step towards her. I know exactly what you and Aaron are up to, and I won't let you get away with it. For a brief moment, her mask slipped, revealing the true ugliness beneath. Her eyes narrowed, her mouth twisting into a sneer. You can't stop us, Beth, she hissed. We're going to take what's rightfully ours, whether you like it or not, and there's nothing you can do about it. With that, she brushed past me, her shoulder colliding with mine in a deliberate show of dominance. But I barely registered the physical contact, my mind already whirring with determination. This was war, plain and simple, and as I stepped into my father's room, my resolve hardened. I would protect our family, our legacy at all costs, no matter what it took. A few days later, Aaron and Ally showed up at my doorstep once again, this time with a smug look on their faces that immediately set me on edge. We've done the math, Aaron announced without preamble, and to cover the construction costs, we'll need you to fork over $150,000. I stared at him in disbelief, certain I had misheard. $150,000? For a single house? Allie rolled her eyes, as if I were a petulant child questioning the obvious. Don't be dense, Beth. This is a mansion we're talking about, not some run-of-the-mill hovel. The materials alone are going to cost an arm and a leg. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the outrageous figure. Even if I liquidated every asset and drained my savings, I'd barely scratch the surface of that amount. That's an unreasonable demand, I protested weakly, already sensing the futility of my words. Aaron's expression hardened, his eyes glinting with barely concealed contempt. Don't give us that crap, sis. We both know you've got Grandpa's inheritance money stashed away somewhere. You owe us at least that much for agreeing to this whole thing. Ally nodded vigorously, her perfectly coiffed hair bouncing with each emphatic bob of her head. Exactly. It's time to stop being so damn selfish and start sharing the wealth, Beth. We're family, after all. The word family felt like a slap in the face, twisted and perverted beyond recognition by their insatiable greed. How could they claim to care about familial bonds when they were so willing to trample over everything our grandfather had held dear? I need some time to think this over, I stammered, my mind reeling from their audacity. Aaron shrugged, already turning to leave. Fine, take your time, but we expect that money in full by the end of the month, no excuses. As they walked away, I couldn't help but feel like I was being backed into a corner, forced to choose between preserving my grandfather's legacy and appeasing the insatiable appetites of these two vultures. But deep down, I knew there had to be more to their story. Some hidden agenda or ulterior motive driving their outrageous demands. They were playing a game, and I was determined to figure out the rules before it was too late. With trembling fingers, I transferred a lump sum of $20,000 into their account. A token gesture to buy myself some time. Then I made a call to an old friend of my grandfather's, a private investigator who owed him a favor. I need you to dig into Aaron and Ally's finances, I said, my voice steady and resolved. There's something they're not telling me, and I intend to find out what it is. This was just the beginning, I knew, but for the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope that I might be able to turn the tables and reclaim what was rightfully mine, and honor my grandfather's memory in the process. A week later, the private investigator I'd hired called me with some startling news about Aaron and Ally's finances. "Well, it's not looking good for them," he said without preamble. "Their business is deep in the red, and they've been defaulting on loan payments left and right." My heart sank as the pieces began to fall into place. So that's why they were demanding so much money from me. Exactly, he confirmed. And get this, they recently booked an extravagant vacation to the Bahamas, blowing through what little savings they had left. White-hot fury coursed through my veins as the full extent of their betrayal became clear. They had no intention of using my inheritance to build their dream home. They were simply trying to dig themselves out of a financial hole of their own making, all while living it up on a lavish tropical getaway. Those lying, manipulative snakes. I seethed, my hands balling into fists. They were playing me this whole time, trying to bleed me dry for their own selfish gains. The investigator let out a low whistle. "You got that right. And from the looks of it, they were planning to skip town after draining your accounts, leaving you high and dry." A sudden thought occurred to me, and I felt a rush of determination unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. Not if I have anything to say about it. Without another word, I hung up the phone and immediately called my old friend Ron, a seasoned lawyer who had worked closely with my grandfather over the years. "Ron, I need your help," I said, laying out the entire sordid tale of Aaron and Ally's deceit. "They've been trying to swindle me out of my inheritance, and I want to make sure they pay for what they've done." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line before Ron spoke, his voice laced with grim resolve. "Say no more, Beth. We're going to make sure those two get what's coming to them, and protect your grandfather's legacy in the process." Over the next few days, we worked tirelessly, poring over legal documents and crafting an ironclad plan. By the time Aaron and Ally returned from their ill-gotten vacation, everything was in place. Their smug grins quickly faded when they saw the construction crews hard at work on the property, but not on the palatial mansion they had envisioned. "What the hell is this?" Aaron demanded, his face flushing with rage as he stormed over to where I stood, arms crossed defiantly. "This is your dream home, brother dear," I replied, unable to keep the satisfaction from creeping into my voice. "A brand new community center, just like Grandpa always wanted." As realization dawned on their faces, I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. The tables had finally turned, and this time I was the one holding all the cards. Aaron's face turned a deep shade of crimson as he lunged towards me, his hands balled into tight fists. "What the hell is this? This isn't what we agreed upon." I stood my ground, unflinching in the face of his rage. "On the contrary, brother dear, this is exactly what we agreed upon, or rather, what I agreed to." Ron stepped forward, brandishing a thick stack of documents. "The final signed contract is for the construction of a community center on this property. Beth owns the land outright, and she has every legal right to proceed with her grandfather's vision." Ally's shrill voice cut through the tension like a knife. "You can't do this. We had a deal." "A deal?" I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "You mean the deal where you tried to swindle me out of my inheritance to fund your lavish lifestyle? The one where you wished for our own father's death just so you could get your grubby hands on his money?" Their faces drained of color as the truth hung in the air, laid bare for all to see. In that moment, they looked small, pathetic, the facade of their supposed success crumbling around them. "How did you?" Ally stammered, her voice trembling with fear. "I have my ways," I replied coolly. "And thanks to your little confession at the hospital, I have all the evidence I need to make sure you never see a single penny of our family's money." Aaron's eyes narrowed, his lips curling into a snarl. "You can't prove anything. It's your word against ours." With a flick of my wrist, I produced my phone and hit play. Ally's damning words filling the air like a noxious cloud. "It's awful, isn't it? But until he's gone, we can't get what's truly ours." Silence hung thick in the air as the recording ended, the weight of their betrayal crushing down upon them. Aaron's shoulders slumped in defeat, while Ally buried her face in her hands, her perfectly manicured nails doing little to hide her shame. "You're ruined," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Both of you. Your greed has cost you everything." As if on cue, a sleek black sedan pulled up, and two imposing figures emerged. Aaron's boss and a representative from the loan company they were in debt to. "Aaron Carter," the boss bellowed, his face twisted in disgust. "I've just been made aware of your extracurricular activities. Consider yourself fired, effective immediately." The loan representative stepped forward, brandishing a stack of papers. "And as for you, Mrs. Carter, we'll be initiating foreclosure proceedings on your home and assets to recoup the outstanding debts. You're both officially bankrupt." As they were led away, defeated and humiliated, I couldn't help but feel a sense of bittersweet triumph. They had brought this upon themselves, allowing their greed and selfishness to consume them until there was nothing left. And as for me, I had preserved my grandfather's legacy, ensuring that his dream would live on long after those who sought to destroy it were nothing but a distant memory. In the aftermath of Aaron and Ally's public humiliation, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The storm had passed, and I had emerged victorious, but at what cost? As I sat alone in the silence of my grandfather's woodshop, running my fingers over the smooth, worn surface of his workbench, I couldn't help but wonder if he would have approved of the lengths I'd gone to protect his dream. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my reverie, and I turned to see Ron standing in the doorway, a somber expression on his face. "Beth," he said, stepping inside, "I know this hasn't been easy for you, but I think you did the right thing." I let out a weary sigh, my shoulders slumping under the weight of my conflicted emotions. Did I, though? I mean, I practically destroyed my own brother's life. What kind of person does that make me? Ron's brow furrowed as he considered my words. "A person who was willing to do whatever it took to preserve her family's legacy," he said finally. "Aaron and Ally brought this upon themselves with their greed and deceit. You simply leveled the playing field." His words rang true, but still, a part of me couldn't shake the nagging sense of guilt. These were people I had once loved and trusted, after all, family. As if sensing my inner turmoil, Ron reached into his briefcase and produced a small recording device. "I think you should hear this," he said, pressing play. Ally's voice filled the room, her tone dripping with disdain as she spat the words I had overheard at the hospital. "It's awful, isn't it? But until he's gone, we can't get what's truly ours." I flinched, the memory of those words still fresh and raw, like a jagged shard of glass piercing my heart. But then Ron rewound the tape and played it again, this time with the full context. "And that's why we need to sort out this mess with Beth before Dad passes away. It's awful, isn't it? But until he's gone, we can't get what's truly ours, a chance to make things right and honor Grandpa's legacy." My breath caught in my throat as the true meaning of her words sank in. They hadn't been wishing for our father's death at all. They had been lamenting the fact that they wouldn't be able to make amends until after he was gone. Tears stung my eyes as the weight of my mistake came crashing down upon me. I had let my anger and suspicion blind me to the truth, lashing out in a misguided quest for vengeance. "Oh, Ron," I whispered, my voice thick with remorse. "What have I done?" But even as the guilt threatened to consume me, a glimmer of hope shone through. Aaron and Ally's lives might have been shattered, but they were still alive, and there was still a chance, however slim, to make things right. With renewed determination, I turned to Ron, my jaw set in a firm line. "We need to find them," I said, my voice steady and resolute, "and we need to make this right, no matter what it takes." The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I had a sense of purpose, not just to preserve my grandfather's legacy, but to heal the deep wounds I had inflicted upon my own family. It was time to find redemption, one painful step at a time. It took months of searching, but eventually, Ron and I managed to track down Aaron and Ally. They had hit rock bottom, living out of a dilapidated motel, scraping by on menial jobs just to put food on the table. When I first laid eyes on them, huddled together in that dingy room, it was as if the weight of the world had come crashing down upon their shoulders. Aaron, once so full of swagger and bravado, now looked small and defeated, his eyes hollow and haunted. and ally, who had always carried herself with such poise and confidence, was a mere shadow of her former self, her once immaculate appearance now disheveled and unkempt. For a moment I wavered, the old anger and resentment threatening to resurface, but then I remembered my purpose, redemption, healing, and the chance to make things right. "Aaron, ally," I said, my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions raging within me. "We need to talk." They regarded me warily like cornered animals, and I couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt at the fear and distrust etched onto their faces. "What do you want from us?" Aaron spat, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Haven't you taken enough?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. "I want to apologize," I said, the words feeling foreign on my tongue. "I made a terrible mistake, and in my quest for vengeance I let my anger blind me to the truth." Ally's brow furrowed, confusion and skepticism warring across her features. "What are you talking about?" Slowly, I recounted the events that had led me down this path, the misinterpreted conversation, the assumption of their ill intent, and the devastating consequences that followed. As I spoke, their expressions shifted from guarded to stunned, the realization of my mistake dawning on them like a cruel twist of fate. "Beth," Aaron breathed, his voice barely above a whisper, "we never meant for any of this to happen." Tears stung my eyes as I nodded, the weight of my guilt threatening to crush me. "I know," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "and I am so sorry." In that moment something shifted between us. A wall built upon years of resentment and mistrust began to crumble. Ally reached out, her hand trembling, and took mine in a gesture of tentative forgiveness. "We were all blinded by our own desires," she said, her voice tinged with regret, "but that doesn't excuse what we put you through." And just like that, the floodgates opened, and we poured out our hearts to one another, laying bare the pain and misunderstandings that had festered for far too long. It was a cathartic release, a cleansing of the soul that left us all drained but oddly at peace. As the sun began to set outside the grimy motel window, casting long shadows across the room, I knew that our journey was far from over. There would be more challenges to face, more wounds to heal, and more bridges to mend. But in that moment, surrounded by the love and forgiveness of my family, I felt a sense of contentment that I hadn't experienced in years. Grandpa's dream had been realized, his legacy preserved, and now with Aaron and Ally by my side, the future looked brighter than ever. "We're going to get through this," I said, my voice ringing with conviction. "Together." And as we embraced, a newfound bond forged in the fires of our shared tribulations, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them as a united front, a family, whole and unbroken, standing tall in the face of adversity. For in that moment, I had found something far more precious than any inheritance or material possession, the true meaning of redemption and the unshakable power of love to heal even the deepest of wounds. "Did you really think you could just move your parents into our home without asking me, Ryan?" I asked, my voice quivering with a mix of anger and disbelief. Ryan, my husband of 6 years, looked up from his laptop with a smirk that I had grown to despise. "Oh, Amelia, don't be so dramatic. It's just for a while, and besides, it's not like you have a say in this." His words felt like a slap in the face. The house, a charming 2-story nestled in a quiet suburb, wasn't just any house. It was the home my grandparents had left me, the place where I'd planned to raise our son, Lucas, away from the toxicity of Ryan's family. "You do remember that this house is in my name, right?" I retorted, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. Ryan's expression faltered, his smugness giving way to a flicker of uncertainty. As our 2-year-old Lucas toddled into the room, I forced a smile for his sake. He was blissfully unaware of the tension, his chubby hands reaching up towards me. Scooping him into my arms, I kissed his forehead, trying to calm the storm inside me. "I'm not okay with this, Ryan. Your parents, they've never respected me or our space. Why now?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Ryan shrugged, his indifference stoking my frustration. "They're family, Amelia. You wouldn't understand." Family. The word echoed in my mind mockingly. My own family, who ran a small but beloved coffee shop in town, had always been my sanctuary. They were nothing like Ryan's controlling, overbearing parents. The doorbell rang, interrupting our standoff. Through the peephole, I saw them. Ryan's parents, suitcases in tow, ready to invade our life. My heart sank. "Fine, Ryan, let them in. But this isn't over," I hissed, handing Lucas to him before opening the door. "Amelia, darling," cooed Ryan's mother, sweeping past me without a second glance. His father followed, a stern man who'd barely acknowledged me since our wedding day. As they settled in, making themselves comfortable in my living room, I felt a sense of intrusion that was all too familiar. This was just the beginning, I realized. But as I watched them, something within me shifted. I was done being the compliant daughter-in-law, bending to their whims. I retreated to the kitchen, my mind racing. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I was ready to fight for it. The following days turned into a blur of unwelcome changes. Ryan's mother, Elaine, had a way of making her presence known in the most suffocating manner. She rearranged my kitchen, criticized my parenting, and treated our home as if it were her own. "Lucas shouldn't be eating that, Amelia. It's not healthy," Elaine chided one morning as I prepared Lucas's breakfast. I bit back a sharp retort, feeling the familiar sting of her judgment. "He's fine, Elaine. It's just cereal." She'd skied, shaking her head. "In our house, we believe in a proper diet. You really should learn." Her comments were like needles, each one pricking at my patience. Ryan, as usual, was of no help, buried in his work and oblivious to the growing tension. One evening, as I put Lucas to bed, Elaine barged into his room. "He's still not sleeping through the night? You must be doing something wrong." Her words were a slap in the face, undermining my efforts as a mother. "I'm doing the best I can," I snapped, unable to contain my frustration. Elaine's eyes narrowed. "Clearly, your best isn't good enough. Maybe if you had a real job and some structure in your life." I felt a surge of anger. "This is my house, Elaine. You're a guest here. Don't forget that." Her laugh was cold and dismissive. "Oh dear. Ryan never mentioned how delusional you are. This is his house too, and as his mother, I've every right to be here." The following day, I reached my breaking point. I found Elaine in Lucas's room, going through his drawers. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. "I'm just organizing. This room is a mess," she replied, not even bothering to look at me. "That's it! I want you out of my house now!" I exclaimed, feeling a mix of fury and desperation. Elaine turned to face me, her expression one of mock surprise. "Your house? Oh, sweetie, you're just the wife. This is Ryan's house too, and he wants us here." I stormed out of the room, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Ryan's betrayal, Elaine's intrusiveness, the way they dismissed my feelings, it was all too much. I was tired of being pushed around, tired of having my home invaded by people who had no respect for me. That night, as I lay in bed, a plan began to form in my mind. I was going to take back control of my life, my home, and my son's future. Ryan and his parents had crossed a line, and it was time for them to learn that I wasn't going to be their doormat any longer. The fight was just beginning, and I was ready. A few days later, Ryan dropped a bombshell during an already tense dinner. "My parents need to stay with us longer. Their house is undergoing renovations," he said, nonchalantly, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I felt my blood boil. "Longer?" "Ryan, we never discussed them staying in the first place," he shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "It's just for a few more weeks. What's the big deal?" "The big deal? The big deal is that your mother treats me like an intruder in my own home." I snapped, my frustration reaching its peak. Elaine, overhearing our conversation, chimed in with her usual condescending tone. "Amelia, you're overreacting. We're family. You should be more accommodating." That night, sleep eluded me. Their words echoed in my mind, fueling a growing resolve. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. It was time to fight back. The next morning, I called my brother, Alex, who had always been my confidant. "They're taking over my life, Alex. I can't take it anymore," I confessed, choking back tears. Alex's voice was firm and supportive. "Amelia, you need to stand up for yourself. Don't let them bully you. It's your house, your rules." His words were the push I needed. I decided to confront Ryan, but this time I would be prepared. I gathered evidence of Elaine's overbearing behavior, the rearranged kitchen, the disrupted routines, her constant belittling comments. Confrontation day arrived. I waited until Elaine and Ryan were in the living room. "We need to talk, now," I announced, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Ryan looked up, surprised by my tone. What's this about, Amelia? It's about your parents, Ryan. Their constant interference, their disrespect for my boundaries. It ends today, I declared, holding up my list of grievances. Elaine scoffed. This is ridiculous. We're just trying to help. Help? By undermining me at every turn? By treating me like I don't matter in my own home? I countered, my anger palpable. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. Amelia, they're my parents. We can't just kick them out. No, Ryan. They're guests in my home and they've overstayed their welcome. Either they leave or I do. With Lucas, I ultimatumed, my resolve unwavering. The room fell silent, the gravity of my words hanging in the air. I saw the flicker of realization in Ryan's eyes, but it was Elaine who spoke first. You wouldn't dare, she hissed, her facade slipping. Watch me, I retorted, my voice laced with determination. That night, Ryan's parents packed their bags. As they left, Elaine shot me a venomous look. You'll regret this, Amelia. But as the door closed behind them, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was the first step in reclaiming my life, and I was ready for whatever came next. The days following Elaine and her husband's departure were eerily quiet. Ryan's demeanor had shifted to one of cold detachment, his interactions with me minimal and strained. I found solace in the peace of my reclaimed home and the joyous laughter of Lucas. One evening, as Lucas played with his toys, Ryan announced, I've got to go on a business trip. I'll be gone for a few weeks. His tone was indifferent, as if our strained relationship had taken a backseat to his career. Fine, I replied curtly, barely concealing my relief at the prospect of his absence. After Ryan left, the house felt different, liberating even. I started to revert the changes Elaine had imposed, each alteration feeling like a small victory. But the true turning point came when I stumbled upon a series of emails on Ryan's laptop, which he'd carelessly left open. They detailed an affair, an ongoing betrayal that cut deeper than any of his mother's snide remarks. Anger, hurt, and a sense of betrayal churned within me. I decided it was time for Ryan to face the consequences of his actions. I began to meticulously plan my next moves, each step calculated to ensure that Ryan and his family paid for their deceit and manipulation. The first step was to secure my financial and legal standing. I contacted a lawyer, explained my situation, and started the proceedings for what was now an inevitable divorce. Next, I turned my attention to the house, the symbol of my grandparents' legacy and my independence. I reached out to a real estate agent. I want to sell the house, quickly and quietly, I told her. She was taken aback but sensed the urgency in my voice. Are you sure about this, Amelia? This is a big decision, she cautioned. I've never been more sure of anything, I replied with a resolve born of betrayal and a newfound strength. The house went on the market, and within days, offers began to roll in. The thought of Ryan returning to find his precious control stripped away brought a bitter satisfaction. In the midst of this, I reconnected with my family, drawing strength from their support. My parents were appalled by Ryan's behavior and rallied around me and Lucas. We're here for you, no matter what, my father assured me. As I watched Lucas play, innocent and unaffected by the turmoil, I made a silent vow to protect his happiness at all costs. Ryan's return loomed on the horizon, but I was no longer the woman he had left behind. I was ready to confront him, armed with the truth and a plan to reclaim my life. The day Ryan returned was marked with a tension that hung thick in the air. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind, envisioning every possible outcome, yet my heart raced as I heard his key turn in the lock. Amelia, I'm home, Ryan called out, his voice echoing through the now unfamiliar space. I emerged from the kitchen, my posture rigid. Welcome back, Ryan. We need to talk. He glanced around, noticing the changes I had made. What's going on? The house looks different. I didn't flinch. I sold the house, Ryan. It's no longer ours. His face contorted with disbelief. You did what? You can't just sell our house without telling me. It's my house, Ryan, and after what I discovered, I don't think you have a say in it anymore, I said, my voice steady but laced with a simmering anger. He scoffed, trying to regain his composure. What are you talking about? The affair, Ryan. I know everything, I revealed, watching as his facade crumbled. His attempt at denial was weak and short-lived. Amelia, it's not what you think. I think it's exactly what it looks like. You betrayed me, our family, I retorted, the hurt evident in my tone. Ryan's expression shifted from shock to anger. You're overreacting. We can work through this. There's no we anymore, Ryan. I've filed for divorce, I declared, handing him the papers. The ensuing conversation was a blur of accusations and denials, but I stood my ground. The man I had married was gone, replaced by a stranger fueled by selfish desires. As he stormed out, vowing to fight the divorce, I felt a sense of liberation mixed with apprehension. I had taken the first step towards a new life, but the battle was far from over. In the following weeks, the reality of our situation became public. Ryan's parents, once so imposing and confident, were now caught in the crossfire of their son's indiscretions. Their attempts to contact me were met with silence. I had severed all ties, focusing solely on Lucas and the finalization of the divorce. The day of the court hearing arrived. Ryan looked defeated, the weight of his actions finally dawning on him. As the judge granted the divorce and custody of Lucas to me, I felt a sense of justice. Ryan's plea for reconciliation after the hearing fell on deaf ears. "You made your choice, Ryan. Now live with it," I said, turning away from him for the last time. The news of our divorce and Ryan's affair spread, affecting his reputation and relationships. His parents, once so proud and judgmental, were now shunned by those who had once respected them. As I walked out of the courthouse, holding Lucas's hand, I realized that this was not just an end, but a new beginning. A fresh start for me and my son, free from deceit and manipulation. The future was uncertain, but it was ours to shape. Life after the divorce felt like emerging from a long, dark tunnel into the light. I had regained control, not just of the house, which was now sold, but of my life. Lucas, blissfully unaware of the adult complexities, thrived in the love and stability I provided. My days were busy but fulfilling, with my focus now on rebuilding our lives and managing the coffee shop, which had become my sanctuary. However, the shadow of Ryan and his parents lingered. One day, as I was closing the shop, Ryan appeared, looking disheveled and desperate, a stark contrast to the composed man I had once known. "Amelia, please, I need to talk to you," he pleaded, his eyes searching mine for a hint of the compassion that once existed. I hesitated, the sight of him stirring a mix of emotions. "What do you want, Ryan?" "It's about the alimony and child support," he began, his voice tinged with embarrassment. "I can't afford it. My job, I lost it because of the scandal, and my parents, they're broke too." His words were like a cold splash of reality. "That's not my problem, Ryan. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences." "But Amelia, I have nothing left. I'm begging you, for old time's sake." His voice broke, revealing the depth of his despair. I felt a pang of pity, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memory of his betrayal. "Old time's sake? Those times are gone, Ryan. You should have thought about the consequences before you cheated and lied." I turned to leave, but his next words stopped me in my tracks. "I'm sorry, Amelia. Truly I am. I was a fool, and I ruined everything. Please, help me." For a moment, I saw the man I had once loved, vulnerable and regretful. But the pain he had caused was too deep, the betrayal too raw. "I'm sorry, Ryan, but I can't help you. You need to figure this out on your own," I said firmly, closing the chapter of our shared past for good. As I walked away, leaving Ryan standing alone, I felt a sense of closure. The journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartache, but it had led me to a place of strength and independence. Life moved on. Lucas grew, his laughter and curiosity filling our home with joy. The coffee shop flourished, becoming a hub of warmth and community. And as for me, I found contentment in the simple pleasures: the smell of fresh coffee, the sound of Lucas's giggles, and the support of friends and family. Ryan and his parents became distant memories, their legacy a cautionary tale of the consequences of betrayal and selfishness. My journey had taught me the power of resilience and the importance of standing up for oneself. As I locked the shop that evening, I looked up at the sky, its hues of orange and pink signaling the end of another day. I smiled, holding Lucas's hand tightly. Our future was uncertain, but it was bright. We were moving forward, one step at a time, into a new chapter of our lives.